Hi grade 9s. Today we are going to talk about metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. And if you're keeping track, this is lesson 1.7. Okay, so you've got the sheet already, right? So you're just going to be following along, listening up here. So metals make up 75% of the elements. So the majority of the elements are the metals. And on this periodic table, the red ones are considered the metals. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch there. And they are located on the left side of the staircase on the periodic table. So if you look at your periodic table, you'll see this staircase that exists. So it's right here. So it kind of zigzags down, right? So that is the staircase. To the left of that is the metals. Now, properties of metals. So the number one property, we know that metals have luster. So luster is essentially just a fancy word for, for shiny. They are silver gray in color, except for, and there's two of them here that are not silver and gray. So I wanted you to think about metals that you know that are not silver or gray. And yeah, so you will come up with gold. We have our AU, and then this one, copper, CU. So our gold and our copper, and you can fill those in on your notes there. Now, we also know that metals are malleable. So a lot of these terms will be new for you, so you gotta make sure you can learn them. So if something is malleable, that just means that we can bend it. And here, gold is the most malleable metal. So as you see here, we've got a piece of gold, and you can hammer it out into this thin, like gold foil, right? And that can bend. So that's a property of metals. Now, they are also ductile. This means that, so ductile or ductility would be the property, which means they can be made into wire. And we see here, this is copper wire, and you'll often see this around. Now, properties of metals are solid at room temperature, except for, there's an exception here. Any guesses? Can you think of a metal that is liquid at room temperature? Yeah, mercury. So this is our Hg. Not sure if you've ever had the opportunity to play with mercury. It's really interesting. You're not supposed to touch it because it is a carcinogen. It only gets into your skin if you have some sort of a cut or something. So you don't need to worry too much. But yeah, when I was a kid, they let us play with it in school. I actually remember my grade 5 science teacher letting us play with mercury, and now you would just really not do that. So yeah, safety stuff has changed. Okay, properties of metals, they also conduct heat and electricity. So as you can see here, these are two pots on the stove, right? And because they're made of metal, the heat from the stove is going to be transferred around that whole pot. So if you touch the pot, on the side here, that would be quite hot, right? So the heat and the electricity are able to move through metals easily. Now, nonmetals make up only 15% of the elements. So the nonmetals here are the blue ones over here. And they're located to the right of the staircase on the periodic table. So same staircase, and now these ones are on the right side. Now, properties of nonmetals. This is actually an example of sulfur here. So they have no luster, so we say they're dull. So none of the nonmetals are shiny. They're brittle, which means you get these like powdery pieces. So remember with the gold, if you hammered it, you could hammer it out into a thin sheet. You cannot do that with non-metals. If they're solid like this, you hammer it, it'll just break apart. So it's just brittle. You can't put them you can't bend them. They are also non-conductors of heat and electricity, and that would mean they're called insulators. Now, the handles, as we said before, like this will be very hot, right? The pan, because that's metal, whereas the handle is an insulator, and so they are not conductors of heat and electricity, and that's why we can hold on to them there. And they are solid or gas at room temperature. So those are the properties of the non-metals. Now, the metalloids are kind of this weird little class. So these are the yellow ones on our chart here. So they make up just 6% of the elements, so we don't have very many of them. They're located on the staircase of the periodic table. Okay, now the properties of the metalloids. Basically, they've got properties of both. metals and nonmetals. They are solid at room temperature. Some have luster, some do not. And we call them semiconductors, which means they kind of conduct electricity. So not very much electricity or heat can pass through them, just a little bit. Okay, so your assignment for this topic is to complete the crossword puzzle and the word search, and we'll talk about that next class. Thanks, everyone.